Hello, everyone. My name is Gaurav Bhatia. I've been part of Publicis Sapient from last 17 odd years. And through this time, I have worked on some of the largest digital transformations for our clients across different verticals. I'm currently working on a similar journey for one of the largest online retailer in Canada. This journey, we created a custom lightweight framework for doing application validation. And we use live traffic mirroring for that. I'll be taking you through that journey today. So application validation is a pretty standard problem. For long, we have standard ways of testing. So why do we need a new way of testing, a new framework? We used traffic mirroring as a new and additional way to validate. So that's what we'll talk about. We'll quickly introduce, what is traffic mirroring. We'll see that there are standard ways in industry to do mirroring. So, if there are out of box ways to do mirroring, why do we need a custom framework if things can be done out of box? Once we understand that, we will go into the logical architecture of the framework, and then we'll follow it up with the deep dive of some of the key architectural characteristics and key components. In the end, it's a validation framework. So measuring success is obviously important. We need to know whether once we run this validation, whether it is successful or whether it failed. So we'll discuss how we build automated processes and tools for measuring same. In the end, we will discuss the future roadmap, how we plan to enhance it, and hopefully also make it available for everyone to use and basically enhance. So as I was talking about, there are standard ways of testing. In all our projects, we use unit testing, integration testing, performance testing. We do it on dedicated environments using, in most of the case, hopefully in automated fashion through automated scripts. But we still see so many, new feature rollouts that fail in production. And if we'll do postmortem, and if in all the projects we do that, we find, same usual suspects. We will probably see that there is a condition that ran in production because of which it failed, or production data was very specific and hence we could not really catch it in the lower environment, or my production users are really different. They have been there for obviously longest of time, and our local or our users that we have created in our lower environments don't really match them, right? And then for performance test, finding the right load model is always a challenge. When we usually run on our test on lower environment, caching usually plays a very important role and runs bit differently because you do not have your production data set. So caching is not really same. So all of these were happening in our application as well when we were doing our postmortems. And there is always a next step to improve scripts, data model, and all of that. But there was an interesting observation that we made in our project. So as part of our, SRE maturity, we were using various indicators like service level indicators like, error rate, response times to identify issues in production. And many a times we were, during the feature rollouts, we used to identify these issues on production fairly quickly, often, within matter of minutes, and we used to roll them back. So, one obvious next step there was, if you are able to so quickly find out issues in these feature builds on production, within matter of minutes, then why don't you just test your feature builds on production traffic and find these issues before they impact the real customers? So that was our primary motivation to actually build or use rather traffic mirroring to test feature builds. So ultimately our hope was, when we thought through it, we realized that the entire production traffic would be used for this validation. So our hope was, we'll basically use now real world data variations. So no more mocking. So absolutely no artificial behavior whatsoever. And in the end, concurrency and parallelism, which is usually very different in production, we will be able to achieve that in our test. So that was our motivation. So before we actually see how we use traffic mirroring, let's just quickly see what exactly it is. So definition of traffic mirroring is pretty standard. At some point in your physical infrastructure, you make exact copy of your original packet and tunnel it through one or more additional destinations. Now, these destinations are usually called mirrors and hence, traffic mirroring. But there are certain important characteristics when you copy it, right? First, this copy can be done at various layers. When I say layers, basically various TCP layers. Usually it is done at layer 4, where you get a handle to a TCP packet and really cannot do much with it, but then you have a handle to TCP packet if you want to, copy and mirror it. But, usually it is done at layer 7, where let's say you can get handle to what is inside that TCP packet in form of, let's say, if you're using HTTP request, then you can get handle to that HTTP packet. You can use its URI, body, or whatever you want, right? So first important consideration is where you want to mirror it. Second important consideration is there should not really be any impact to production when you copy it. So whether your test cluster or mirror or whatever you want to call it, it is slow, it is not responding, it is dead, it doesn't even exist, let's say at some point, it should not really matter. So the mirroring should happen in a way where it is copy, fire, and forget. Don't really care what is on the other side. That is second important consideration. The third consideration is that, at what point in your infrastructure you want to do mirroring. Again, it doesn't really matter. So if you have, let's say, a monolith, you can do it before monolith, before the traffic actually goes into full big monolith, or it can be done before specific service, or maybe if you have a group of services, you have a orchestration layer which is actually sitting behind a group of service, you can mirror it at that point. What is important is that, at whatever point you do it, it is copied to exactly same point in your mirror architecture. So that's the third important consideration. Now, after this presentation, if you actually go and search internet, you will probably see different names. So I just want to quickly talk about that so that you can easily, explore it more. So traffic mirroring is also known by a different name like shadow feeding, traffic shadowing, or just shadowing. So I talked about different layers, right? In our case, we obviously wanted handle to an HTTP packet so that we can actually use it. So there are various reverse proxies available. I mean, the standard ones like HA proxy, Envoy proxy, or if you are provisioning on cloud, then your internal load balancers available on Google, or for that matter on any cloud, all of them support mirroring out of box. So it is simply a configuration that you can do at reverse proxies if you are using a layer 7 reverse proxy, and you can do mirroring, right? So if you can really do it, this mirroring, copy and fire, and really forget about it using these standard proxies. So why do we need a custom framework? When we were building this, we always wanted to use this for different applications. It was not something for one specific application. So we started thinking through various scenarios that would be common across different applications. And we realized that most application would need to handle certain common concerns if you have to do this mirroring. And some of these concerns are like, you would never probably just copy the request as is. You would need to transform the request. You would basically need to mask data in one form or another. You might need to filter certain requests. You don't want to send all the requests to your mirror. You might want to throttle the traffic. So it is not that always if you have, let's say, million requests per second on production, you want to, send everything to your mirror. So you want to throttle certain requests. And then that throttling can be a bit complex. It might be user-based throttling. It might be traffic-based, right? So all of these transformation request scenarios were there. In addition to that, we realized that we need some sort of state management. We'll discuss more about it. But then, HTTP is a stateless protocol. But when you use it, let's say a React application or any other front-end, framework for that matter, you kind of keep a state of various things like cart ID on front end and all of that. And you use this state for subsequent requests. So it's not really that you simply copy each request. You will have to somehow use responses from one request in subsequent request. So kind of, state management. So all the applications would require some sort of state management. In the end, you don't want to simply, do live mirroring. You would also probably want to record and replay capability in this. Otherwise, you would just be dependent on, critical traffic on production for doing this validation, and will not be able to do it at all the points. So that was another feature we wanted. And then we wanted, obviously, in the end, automated way to measure success, a validation framework. So it has to be a common way to measure success. And we started exploring, some of the options that are available on internet. Go Replay was one of the options. It was not taking care of all the concerns that I have talked about. It was actually taking care of very small subset of the concerns. So basically, then we decided to build a custom framework that would handle all the concerns that I have talked about, and it would use language and technology that was widely used in our client landscape. So now we understand why there was a need for a custom framework. Let's just see what that framework was. So at high level, if I just look at the logical architecture, there are two parts to this framework. One is the left-hand side, which you see mirror proxy, which we are calling as mirror proxy. And then the right-hand side, which we are calling as mirror plane. Now, mirror proxy is what I called as out of box, few slides back. So it is basically any reverse proxy that you can use. In our application, we actually deployed for one of the applications, we deployed Envoy. And for the other, we actually use the Google internal load balancer. So you can use anything there, right? It can be at any point in infrastructure, as I've already talked about. But what is important is that this traffic goes through something what we are calling as mirror plane. And mirror plane is a layer which is handling all the common concerns for us. So basically, it is the layer that is transforming request. It is the layer that is doing state management. It is the layer that would do recording if you want. It is the layer that you can use to actually replay your entire traffic. So it is the basically custom framework layer that we have built. Now we used Spring Webflux to develop this mirror plane as a reactive microservice. We used Hazelcast as a distributed cache. We used MySQL for persistent storage because if you have to record it, obviously you have to store it somewhere. But the way we build this framework, it does not really matter what distributed cache or persistent source we use, and we will see that in subsequent slide. So we can very easily replace, let's say Hazelcast with Redis or MySQL with your favorite DB, whether it is NoSQL DB or any other DB you want. So before I proceed, overall, quickly summarizing, left-hand side is simply fire and forget, which is you use any layer 7 reverse proxy that is available. It does not matter. Right hand side is the custom framework, which we are calling as mirror plane, that primarily does three things. So it will either do live mirroring for you, obviously the entire pipeline. Second, it will, if you want, record traffic for you. And third, if you want to replay, then it is this mirror plane that you will use for replay. We have seen logical architecture. Let's deep dive into the right hand part of this, which is the mirror plane, because left hand side is, as I said, simply a proxy that you can use. Mirror plane, the way we designed it is that it is a chain of composable processors, and each processor is pre-built to handle a common concern that I have already talked about, right? I'll give you examples of some of the pre-built processors so that you can understand what it is. For example, we have a pre-built processor for filtering requests. Now, it would support all the configurations out of box where you can, let's say, have a regex based configuration on your request URIs, on your headers, on your request body, and basically filter requests based on these configurations. So you just need to configure it properly to use it in your application. Similarly, there are other pre-built components like throttling I talked about. It would allow you to throttle based on actual either user traffic, which is, allow certain percentage of users, 10%, 15%, or whatever you want to configure. Then there are state processors, pre-built state processors, which usually works in tandem. So you would have a processor which would be after the request has gone to your mirror, which will read the response, and from that response whatever you want to persist in state. And there would be another state processor, most likely this time before your request is made, which would actually read from this state and modify the request for you from the state. I'll just take an example here to clarify things. For example, in most of the e-commerce application, there is a cart, right? And the way cart gets created is in one request you will create a cart, and that would return an ID, which is cart ID, and the subsequent request would actually use that cart ID for doing operations on your cart, for example, let's say adding item or whatnot. So the way state processor would work is, one of these state processor would actually extract this new cart ID that would be generated in your mirror. You can't really use the same production cart ID because it would just fail. And then your subsequent request would use this mirror cart ID to actually modify your request for the same user, so that this request works fine in mirror. And this is cart ID is just an example. You will have so many other scenarios where you would probably require this state management, right? So overall, the way this live mirroring pipeline is defined is it is composed of different processors, and each application can create their own chain. So one application can choose to have all these out of box component, other can have subset depending upon the requirement. The other thing we realized is, you know, you would need, for one or other reason, custom processors. And that is what we have, feature that we have built into this framework. So you can easily extend existing base processors. You will get handled to your request, and then you can modify it in whatever way you want, and then add this custom processor anywhere in the chain. So it is a composable chain. It is an extensible. You create your own components and put it anywhere in the chain. And the third important characteristic is that it is completely stateless. So it allows horizontal scaling of entire pipeline. I can scale to handle production volume for each respective application, whatever that volume is. So overall, we are showing two chains here, and most likely you would probably build these two chains. One is for live mirroring. So, this, your live mirroring traffic would go through this chain. And the other one is the persistent chain, where, in parallel, you want to persist this entire traffic. You can do that. Obviously, one processor that would be different would be, your persistent processor. In my case, we have shown as MySQL persistent processor, but then you can build your own if you want. So we have talked about these two chains. There is another very important third chain that is there in this framework, and that is actually the replay pipeline. Now, replay pipeline is like other two chains, also composable, made of composable pre-built processors, which are stateless and extensible. And if you really think about it, replay pipeline has to have probably the same pipeline as your live mirroring, because ultimately the only major difference in replay pipeline is something called a replay processor, which is actually mocking the live customers, right? And one of the other important characteristic of it is it has to run at the desired rate. So maybe the rate at which it was recorded, the entire traffic, or at higher or lower rate. So basically it has, database on one side and request transformation pipeline on other side. And when we were, designing this, we realized that designing it is not trivial. It has to maintain the desired speed rather than be dependent on, the speed at which it can read from DB. So just think about it. Your DB can be slow to handle the required rate, or your other side, which is your pipeline, is not responding as fast. So how do we take care of these scenarios? So basically, we designed the entire replay pipeline as a reactive stream, and we use various reactive operators to control the speed at which it reads from DB and control the speed at which it sends data further down the pipeline. The right hand side actually shows you the marble diagram. It's a pretty standard way to represent a reactive stream. And you can see that we use various reactive operators like buffering, buffer data, then delay until, to prefetch the data, but only send it down the stream based on the rate that this pipeline has been configured to run. Remember, I talked about the MySQL as a persistent source. And if you have really used reactive stream with MySQL DB, you would know that there are not very many reactive JDBC connectors available. There are some available, but they are not really stable. And we could have used an alternate DB as well, for example, which supports fully reactive connectors. But rather than getting logged into a specific DB, we created an approach. Basically, we created our reactive stream such that we use various operators like prefetch and buffering rather than have a standard demand-based backpressure. So overall, there are inbuilt monitors in place to check that this pipeline is able to run at the required rate and fail if it is not able to do so. And then you can configure various parameters like prefetch, buffer size, delay, to actually fine tune it so that it can run at the required rate. Unfortunately, it can be done only manually right now, but this is one of the areas we plan to automate in future. So we have talked about, the design, how we have these composable pipelines for different applications. But then how do we measure whether when we run this, that, the entire validation is successful? So if you recall, in one of the first few slides, I talked about motivation, where we were able to use various indicators in production to roll back the build. So first obvious way to measure success was have exactly same metrics or indicators that you have on production, error rate if you want, response times, in your mirrored or test environment, and measure those. And if you really see an anomaly during your mirroring test in any of those metrics, that means that this test has failed. And most likely, if you actually release this build, it would fail in production as well. So that was one obvious step. And this, by the way, significantly reduced the change failure rate for our application. and different applications. But then we realized one more thing. We realized that, there are still some failures in production which were not caught by mirroring. And when we did the postmortem, we realized that, we could have done one additional step. We could have probably gone into this test environment and look at if there are any new errors in our top errors, or if there is change in the top error pattern. And we could have caught some of the things that we are not catching using our normal metrics, because anomaly is not, big enough for these threshold to trigger. So why not just add this additional manual step to do this validation? Just see if there are new errors in your test environment, or if there is any change in the error pattern. Again, this is done. It's a step that is manually done at this point. But one of the major motivations out of this entire exercise was that we have added a new initiative to do the additional automated validations. And interestingly, we have a session today. Viresh and Thanu are taking that session, where we'll be talking about how we plan to automate build validation, and especially in fragmented service ecosystem. Before I move on, just wanted to also say that it is part of our continuous deployment pipeline. This very simplified view of that pipeline, a part of that pipeline that you see on the right hand side. So as a first step, we actually provision mirror cluster in our continuous deployment pipeline itself. Again, not a necessity. We have an immutable infrastructure, so we provision mirror cluster itself during our pipeline. It might very well be sitting there, an environment that already exists. But what is important is that we, through in this pipeline, we run mirroring. So we move the part of production traffic immediately to this test cluster, and we validate the feature build that is supposed to go now as part of continuous deployment. And only if this mirroring test passes, we move. Otherwise, we fail the build. So another important thing, last but not least, I want to discuss the future roadmap of this framework, because this is the framework we believe can be reused as is in most of the projects that we do in Sapient, or for that matter anywhere else. So we plan to open source this framework as a library that can be reused by everyone. Then there are certain other items in our roadmap. One is, I already talked about, auto tuning of a replay processor. Right now you have to manually tune it if it is not able to run at desired rate. So we want to tune it so that, it can read that it is not able to run fast enough. Let's just increase the prefetch size a bit, see if it is able to run now. If not, increase the prefetch size a bit more. So all of that tuning can be done by system itself. Then we want to automate some of the manual validations we do on errors. This is anyways another initiative that we'll talk about in more detail. And then last thing that we want to focus on is we want to build it as a SaaS solution. So this mirror plane actually is something that you don't need to deploy for each and every application. It is something you just create your own application chain in this mirror chain, in this mirror plane. And then that's pretty much it. Because of the design characteristic of this framework, it can scale for each application, and you can create your own application chains. We do believe that if we take care of certain security concerns, which are possible definitely within an organization at least, then this can be deployed as a SaaS solution within an organization. And any application that is part of that organization can simply start sending traffic to this, a common plane that exists, and you can use your mirroring. That's one of the other items in roadmap. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. I think we had a bit of a chat going on in the chat box. People find it interesting from a scalability perspective. Any other thoughts, any other questions?
Actually, that's a very important characteristics we thought, because we knew that this scalability has to be an important design characteristic, because if it is not able to scale, then you can't control the production volume, right? So it has to scale to production volume. But then what we realized is different applications would have different scaling requirements. So that's where we created this design where you can have your own chains, but composed of these pre-built processors, and then scale according to your traffic.
Gaurav, do you have any support in the solution for anonymizing of PII or secret data?
Now, that's again a very important aspect. So as part of our pre-built processors that I have talked through, we have processors for masking data as well. So you can simply use various configurations to mask your data, for example, or rather filter your data, whatever you want, right? So if you want to mask a portion of your header or a request body, you simply configure it and it will mask it. So rather than sending all the request packet as is to your mirror, you can either filter it out or mask a portion of PII data. So that's all configurable. So usually it would be more important in while recording it, because you don't want to persist some of the critical PII data. So that's where you would actually mask it.
Sure. I think the whole security and ethics bit will always stay there.
So last thing I just want to say is hopefully we'll soon have an announcement related to open sourcing it. So we'll put it in some public repository. Feel free to use it, extend it. So I think it would be really exciting to see some of the new processors that we can build. New scenarios that people would come in their own application and then enhance this.
I'm sure we'll wait for that, Gaurav. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful session.